For nearly 2,000 years, pilgrims have come to Jerusalem, searching for one place, a tomb carved in stone, a place where death was said to be defeated. But beneath layers of faith and legend lies a deeper question. Did this really happen here? This is the story of the lost tomb of Jesus, where history meets belief, and the stones of Jerusalem still whisper the truth of the past. To uncover the mystery, we return to the 4th century, to an empire seeking faith, and a tomb that would change the world.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are really getting into something quite significant, deeply historical, incredibly complex.
We certainly are.
We're heading straight into the heart of Jerusalem's Christian quarter, to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
And it's quite a place. I mean, it's imposing, it feels ancient, mystical, maybe even a bit chaotic when you're there.
Absolutely. And for, 2,000 years now, it's been this ultimate destination for Christian pilgrims.
Yes, drawing people from all over the globe. And it all rests on this single, really monumental claim,
Which is
that within its walls you find the exact spot where Jesus was crucified, Golgotha, and the specific tomb where he was buried and, according to belief, resurrected.
right. But that's what gets tricky, isn't it? You have this incredibly powerful religious tradition, centuries of belief.
Layered on top of history.
Yeah.
And sometimes those layers can obscure the verifiable facts.
And that's our mission in this deep dive. We want to try and peel back those layers. 2 millennia of faith, yes, but also conflict, destruction, rebuilding, and archaeology.
Can we actually prove, historically or archaeologically, the claims made about this specific location? That's the core question.
So we're looking at everything. The New Testament accounts, obviously,
Yeah.
but also writings from ancient historians, people like Eusebius of Caesarea.
Who definitely had his own agenda.
Right. And then fast forward to very recent science, the analysis done during the big restoration project in 2016.
Yeah, that yielded some fascinating data.
So we're digging for verifiable facts, trying to see what lies beneath the marble, the stories, the rubble, the sheer weight of history. Okay, let's get into it.
Where do we start? To really grasp the site today, you actually have to begin not with Jesus in the 1st century,
No.
but with a Roman emperor about 4 centuries later, Constantine.
Okay, so the church we see, or at least its origins, that's Constantine's project.
Entirely.
Yeah.
The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, as a major Christian monument, is rooted in Constantine's decisions, starting early in the 4th century CE.
And this wasn't just, Constantine having a personal religious moment. This was politics, right?
Yeah.
Big time.
Oh, absolutely high-stakes imperial politics. This is the famous Constantinian shift.
Remind us what that involved.
Well, remember, Constantine had, through an agreement in 313 CE, effectively sanctioned Christianity across the Roman Empire. It wasn't the only religion, but it was now officially tolerated, even favored.
A huge change.
Massive. And he was strategically using this growing religion. He saw it as a force to, strengthen and unify his incredibly diverse and sprawling empire.
So it's a tool of statecraft.
Definitely. It wasn't subtle. Think about the big bishop conference in Nicaea. He presided over that. He was actively shaping the religion to serve imperial unity.
And building a massive church in Jerusalem fits into that strategy.
Perfectly. Announcing the discovery and funding the construction of a church of imperial dimensions, as the sources say, in Jerusalem. That was a major political and religious statement, planting the flag, essentially.
Not just any church then. It had to be grand.
Impressive. It had to project imperial power. The original complex, based on descriptions in archaeology, wasn't the sort of cramped, confusing layout you sometimes feel today. It was huge.
How was it laid out?
It was a large basilica complex running east to west, but the absolute centerpiece, the most sacred part, was this colossal circular building, a rotunda.
Called the Anastasis.
Yes, the Anastasis, meaning resurrection. And it was built specifically to enclose and honor the purported tomb.
And Eusebius, you mentioned him. He was there. He wrote about this.
He was deeply involved. Eusebius of Caesarea, he was a bishop, a scholar, and a key supporter of Constantine. He wrote extensively about the discovery, the construction, framing it all as divine providence justifying Constantine's rule.
Okay, so Eusebius is our main source for this period, but we need to read him critically, right? He's essentially writing propaganda for the emperor.
That's a very necessary lens, yes. He definitely presents the discovery in the most glowing, politically useful terms. It's a narrative of triumph.
But does what he describe match the archaeology, the
Yeah.
process of finding it?
Broadly, yes. He describes the effort involved in removing an overlying pagan structure, clearing away debris and uncovering the original bedrock, the tomb, the Rock of Golgotha. That narrative aligns with what archaeologists have found Constantine's builders did.
So he might be spinning it, but the basic facts of the construction seem to hold up.
It seems so. His role was to provide the theological and historical justification for what was an enormous imperial investment, and Constantine used his family to help sell it too.
Ah, right. His mother, Helena. The pilgrimage.
Yes, the story of Helena's pilgrimage to Jerusalem is absolutely crucial for understanding how this site gained its immense significance. Constantine sent her there.
And the story goes.
Well, the really famous story actually emerged decades after her visit, but it became incredibly potent. The story that Helena not only identified the sacred sites, but while excavations were happening, miraculously discovered the fragments of the true cross.
The actual cross Jesus was crucified on.
That's the claim. Whether she literally found ancient wood or if this was a powerful symbolic narrative crafted later to further sanctify the site and Constantine's project, well, historians debate that.
But the impact was huge.
Massive. It cemented the site's importance for all of Christianity almost overnight. The church complex was formally consecrated around 335 CE. It took a local tradition, a local memory, and elevated it to an international, state-sponsored holy place.
Okay, so Constantine builds this massive complex. But you said he had to remove a pagan structure first. What was there before?
Now we rewind about 2 centuries to Emperor Hadrian.
Right, this is where it gets layered.
Exactly. Before Constantine's church, the archaeological evidence is clear. The site was occupied by a large Roman pagan temple complex, built by Hadrian.
Why was Hadrian building there?
Hadrian was dealing with the aftermath of the second major Jewish revolt against Rome, the Bar Kokhba revolt, which ended around 135 CE. He was determined to crush Jewish nationalism and erase Jewish identity from the city.
So rebuilding Jerusalem was part of that strategy.
A key part. He rebuilt it as a Roman colony starting around 132 CE and renamed it. No longer Jerusalem, it became Aelia Capitolina.
Aelia Capitolina, Aelia after his own family name, and Capitolina.
After Jupiter Capitolinus, the chief deity of Rome, housed in the temple on the Capitoline Hill in Rome itself, a very clear statement of Roman dominance.
So what kind of temple did Hadrian build on this specific spot? Eusebius mentioned Aphrodite.
Eusebius does identify it as a temple to Aphrodite, or Venus, perhaps because, pagan sexuality was particularly offensive to Christian writers. But other evidence.
Like what?
Well, the city's new name, Aelia Capitolina, strongly suggests a dedication to the Capitolian triad Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva. There have also been coin finds nearby that support this. It seems likely it was a major temple complex dedicated to the principal gods of Rome.
Essentially transplanting the religious heart of the Roman state onto the former Jewish capital.
Precisely. A powerful act of symbolic replacement.
Okay, here's the critical point then. Why did Hadrian build his massive pagan temple complex exactly on the spot where Constantine later claims Golgotha and the tomb were located? Is that just a coincidence? Prime real estate.
The consensus among historians and archaeologists is almost certainly not a coincidence. It points towards a deliberate act.
Deliberate erasure.
Exactly. Hadrian and his planners wouldn't have just picked a random spot for such an important temple. The thinking is there must have been a strong, persistent local tradition, likely kept alive by the small Jewish Christian community that remained in the area.
A tradition that remembered this specific location as the site of Jesus' execution and burial.
Yes. And Hadrian's goal, in this view, was to build his temple, a symbol of Roman power and paganism, directly over that Christian sacred spot.
To bury it, to suppress it.
To conceal it, suppress the memory, maybe even desecrate it in the eyes of the Christians by placing a pagan temple on top. It's a classic move asserting dominance by overwriting the sacred geography of the conquered. We even have hints from earlier Christian writers, like Melito of Sardis in the 2nd century, already asserting that the place under Hadrian's temple was the true site.
So the memory persisted even while the temple stood there.
It seems so, which leads to how physically this concealment happened, because the landscape itself was, well, a mess.
How so?
Remember Jerusalem's history. In 70 CE, the Roman general Titus had utterly destroyed the city during the first Jewish revolt. He leveled it.
Leaving behind huge amounts of debris.
Unbelievable amounts. Archaeological work confirms this. There was a thick layer of rubble, destruction debris. The German term Schutt is often used, covering this whole area, maybe 5 meters deep in places.
5 meters, that's like over 15 feet of broken city.
It is. Just pulverized stone and building material. And Hadrian, when building Aelia Capitolina in his temple complex.
He didn't clear it all away.
No, he used it. He essentially used this massive layer of soot as landfill, as a foundation. He created a large, elevated level platform for his new temple complex on top of the rubble.
Wow. So he buried the original first-century ground level even deeper.
Exactly. And in doing so, he unintentionally did something remarkable.
Which was?
He preserved the very sites he was likely trying to suppress. By burying the bedrock outcrop of Golgotha and the nearby tomb structures under 5 meters of rubble and then sealing it all under a massive Roman temple, he effectively created a time capsule.
Protecting them.
Protecting them from erosion, from quarrying, from later building activity for almost 2 centuries. Until Constantine arrived with the imperial mandate, the manpower, and the motivation to dig it all up again.
That's incredible. The act of concealment becomes the act of preservation.
It's a fascinating chain of events. You've got the 1st century crucifixion and burial, then the 1st century destruction by Titus, then the 2nd century pagan concealment by Hadrian, leading finally to the 4th century Christian rediscovery and imperial building project by Constantine.
An amazing convergence of history right on this one spot.
Truly remarkable.
Okay, let's shift focus now to the execution site itself. Golgotha. The New Testament gives us some pretty specific conditions, right?
Yes, it does. It says the crucifixion happened on a Friday, linked to Passover, placing it historically around 30, maybe 33 or 34 CE.
Yeah.
Crucially, it states it was outside the city walls of Jerusalem at that time.
And on a hill or elevated place called Golgotha, meaning place of the skull.
Correct. So what does the archaeology tell us about the actual landscape under the current Church of the Holy Sepulchre?
What do they find down there?
Well, the first thing is the floor level of the church today is significantly higher than the original bedrock, maybe 14 meters higher in places.
14 meters. So there's a lot of history layered up.
A lot. And what they found underneath is evidence of a massive ancient stone quarry, really huge, measuring something like 250 meters by 150 meters.
Whoa, that's not a small operation.
Not at all. This was a major industrial site, and the dating points strongly towards it being used heavily by Herod the Great.
Herod. Okay. For what projects?
For his enormous building campaigns, sourcing the high-quality limestone blocks for his rebuilding of the Second Temple complex, for new parts of the city, and importantly, for the city walls themselves.
And the quarrying process itself is the key to identifying Golgotha.
Exactly. Think about how quarrying works. The workers cut out the good, solid stone, the best quality limestone for building.
Right.
But sometimes they'd hit seams of softer, flawed limestone, rock that wasn't suitable for construction, maybe full of cracks or impurities.
What would they do with that?
They'd leave it. They'd cut away all the good stone around it, leaving the unusable rock standing as an isolated outcrop or pillar within the quarry.
The leftovers, basically.
Essentially, yes. And it's one such remaining outcrop of this poor quality limestone left standing within the Herodian quarry that is identified as Golgotha.
And we can still see evidence of that quarrying.
Oh, yes. Archaeologists can point to the telltale signs of Herodian quarry work, the chisel marks, the way the rock was cut right at the edges of this outcrop, confirming its origin and its age.
And because all the good stone around it was removed.
This outcrop would have been left standing high and isolated, highly visible within the context of the quarry and the surrounding landscape during the time of Jesus.
Which fits the idea of an elevated execution site. The place of the skull.
It fits perfectly. The topographical evidence here is considered very strong. Almost all archaeological analysis points to the specific limestone outcrop now inside the church as the Hinrichtungsort, the execution site.
And the Romans would have chosen it deliberately for its visibility.
Absolutely. Its height was key. We estimate, based on the quarry floor level, that the top of this rock might have stood around 22 meters high.
22 meters? That's like a 7-story building?
Roughly, yes. And that height served a crucial Roman purpose: deterrence. Crucifixion wasn't just punishment, it was state terror, a public spectacle meant to warn others.
Putting the crosses up high ensured everyone could see.
Everyone in the vicinity, perhaps even visible from parts of the city, maximum impact, maximum fear, standard Roman practice in rebellious provinces.
Okay, visibility makes sense. What about the location outside the city walls? That was another key requirement.
Yes, and a very important one. Roman policy, particularly during sensitive times like major Jewish festivals, generally required executions to happen outside the city limits.
Why was that?
It was partly practical, crowd control maybe, but also a significant nod to Jewish religious law halakha. During Passover especially, the city had to remain ritually pure. Bloodshed, death, corpses. These things would render the city unclean.
So carrying out an execution inside the walls during Passover was unthinkable.
Deeply problematic, yes. So placing the execution site outside the walls satisfied both Roman security needs and respected, to a degree, Jewish ritual sensitivities.
But how can we be sure this specific spot, the Quarry Rock, was actually outside the walls back in, say, 30 CE? Jerusalem's walls have changed so many times.
That's where careful archaeological mapping comes in. We're talking about the city walls as they existed in the early 1st century CE during the time of Herod the Great and his immediate successors. This is often called the Second Wall.
And where did that wall run?
Excavations and analysis have determined the course of the northern section of that second wall. It ran significantly to the east of the current location of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Meaning the quarry area.
Meaning the entire quarry area, including the Golgotha outcrop, was definitely outside the city limits at the time of Jesus.
That's a critical piece of corroborating evidence.
It's huge. It confirms a key detail found in the gospel accounts and aligns with what we know of both Roman procedures and Jewish law.
So the location works geographically, topographically, historically, and legally.
Yes. And you can even find echoes in other sources. The Jewish historian Flavius Josephus talks about executions happening outside the city. There's also a passage in the Talmud, Tractate Sanhedrin, likely from the 3rd century or so.
What does it say?
It mentions a Yeshu Jesus being executed on the eve of Passover, reinforcing the timing and the context of needing to do it outside the city walls.
It all seems to line up remarkably well for the execution site.
The evidence for the Golgotha Rock location is considered very secure, yes.
Okay, speaking of getting there, let's talk about the route. Pilgrims today walk the Via Dolorosa, the Way of Sorrow. Stations of the Cross ending at the church. How historically accurate is that path?
Ah, the Via Dolorosa. It's a powerful devotional walk, no doubt, but historically accurate? No.
Yeah.
We can say that with quite a bit of certainty. The route that pilgrims walk today, with its specific stations, was largely established and codified by the Franciscan monks, mostly in the 17th and 18th centuries, and they based the route on the layout of Jerusalem as it existed then in the Ottoman period.
So they were using the 16th or 17th century city map,
Right.
essentially, not the 1st century one.
Exactly. They projected the path onto a much later version of the city. It's an anachronism. The streets, the distances, the starting point, it doesn't align with the 1st century topography or likely starting point, which would have been near the Antonia Fortress or Herod's Palace.
So it's a devotional route created much later.
Correct. A tradition built on faith, but not on 1st century geography. However, what is interesting is that even the earliest Christian pilgrim routes, the ones documented back in the 4th, 5th, 6th centuries, right after Constantine,
What about them?
they followed different paths, often starting further south in the city. But where did they all end up?
At the same place?
They consistently ended at the complex built by Constantine, encompassing the rock outcrop and the tomb. The destination, the endpoint identified by Constantine, has remained constant, even if the prescribed path to get there has shifted dramatically over the centuries.
The endpoint tradition seems very strong then. Which brings us neatly to the tomb itself, the Holy Sepulchre. Let's move into that section 3. What do the Christian texts actually say the tomb looked like?
The descriptions in the Gospels are quite specific on a few points. They describe it as a rock-cut tomb.
Meaning carved out of the natural bedrock.
Yes, not a built structure, but excavated into the limestone. Crucially, it's described as a new tomb, one that hadn't been used before.
And that's significant because
it contrasts with the more common practice, especially among wealthier families, of having multi-chambered family tombs designed to hold multiple burials over generations, often using ossuaries or bone boxes.
So this was described as a single, unused burial spot.
Exactly, a single-chamber tomb. The texts also mention a stone slab or bench inside where the body was laid. And very famously, it was sealed with a large rolling stone disc.
Okay, so rock cut, new, single chamber, stone slab, rolling stone entrance. Those are the key features from the text.
Those are the literary clues, yeah.
And those are the features archaeologists were looking for when they got that unprecedented access inside the edicule, the little shrine built over the tomb during the 2016 restoration. That must have been an incredible moment.
It really was a huge international team of scientists. They had a very short window, only about 60 hours, where the covering marble slabs were removed.
Just slabs that had been in place for centuries.
Since at least 1555 CE, possibly earlier. So for the first time in maybe 500 years, they could directly examine the original rock structure underneath.
And what did they find? First off, the age.
Using techniques like optically stimulated luminescence dating on mortar samples found within the tomb structure, they were able to confirm the date. The construction layers associated with the tomb went back at least as far as the 4th century, Constantine's era.
Okay, that makes sense. His builders work there.
But, crucially, the original limestone burial bed or shelf that they exposed beneath the marble, its form and the surrounding cave remnants were entirely consistent with a 1st century Jewish tomb of the type found around Jerusalem.
So the core structure is from the right period.
The core structure, the bedrock tomb itself, yes, it dates fundamentally to the turn of the era, the time of Jesus.
And the design. Did it match the descriptions?
It did. They confirmed it was originally a single-chamber tomb, ein Kammerig. They could see the remains of the limestone shelf where a body would have been laid. And the layout was consistent with an entrance designed to be sealed by a rolling stone.
So scientifically, they verified that there is a 1st century single-chamber rock-cut tomb of the specific type described in the Gospels, located precisely under the edicule.
Yes. The physical evidence confirms the existence, age, and type of tomb at this exact location.
And the context fits too, right? You said this area was used for burials after the quarrying stopped.
Absolutely. The area of the former quarry became a necropolis, a burial ground in the 1st century CE. Finding rock-cut tombs here is exactly what you'd expect. Jewish burial customs emphasize burying the dead relatively quickly and having access to visit the graves. A location just outside the city walls in a former quarry makes perfect sense.
Okay, so the archaeology confirms the type of tomb in the right place for the right time, but
Here's the crucial but. This is the absolute limit of what archaeological science can tell us.
what can it tell us?
It cannot tell us the story behind this specific grave. It cannot confirm the identity of the person or persons who might have been interred there 2,000 years ago.
So it confirms a 1st century tomb, but not necessarily Jesus's tomb.
Precisely. The link between this specific, archaeologically verified 1st century tomb structure and the historical figure Jesus of Nazareth, that remains a matter of historical tradition, continuous belief, and faith. It's not something science can prove or disprove by looking at the rock itself.
That identity question is archaeologically unresolvable.
Because we know what it is, where it is, and when it's from. We don't know whose it was.
And that ambiguity, that lack of absolute proof, is probably why alternative theories sometimes pop up, isn't it? Like the Talpiot tomb, we should probably address that, as it got a lot of media attention.
Ah, yes, the Talpiot tomb. That discovery in 1980 caused a huge sensation. It was a family tomb found accidentally during construction work in the Talpiot neighborhood south of Jerusalem's Old City.
Quite far from the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
About 5 kilometers, yes, a significant distance.
And what made it sensational?
Inside, they found 10 limestone ossuaries, bone boxes, and the inscriptions on some of them seemed, well, potentially explosive. One was inscribed famously, Jesus, son of Joseph. Others had names like Maria, Jose, a diminutive of Joseph, Matthew, names associated with the Holy Family.
Wow. Okay, on the surface, that sounds like a direct challenge to the traditional site.
It certainly fueled a lot of speculation, documentaries, books, but when you examine the evidence critically, the case for it being Jesus' family tomb collapses pretty quickly.
Why? What are the main problems?
Several major ones. First, the location, 5 kilometers away. Think about the timeline of the crucifixion narrative. Jesus dies late on a Friday afternoon. The Sabbath is approaching at sunset. Burial needs to happen before sunset.
Not much time.
Very little time. Moving a body 5 kilometers through the terrain around Jerusalem in that short window. Practically impossible, especially given the ritual preparations also needed.
Okay, logistics is problem 1. What else?
Second, the type of tomb. The Gospels, as we discussed, specify a new, single tomb. Talpiot was clearly a multi-generational family tomb designed to hold many burials over time in ossuaries. It directly contradicts the textual description.
So, wrong location, wrong type of tomb. Anything else?
Yes, the most crucial point, the inscriptions themselves. While names like Jesus, Joseph, and Mary were very common in 1st century Judea,
The specific combination was suspicious.
not just suspicious. After years of debate and analysis, the Israeli Antiquities Authority officially reviewed the evidence and concluded in 2003 that key inscriptions, including the James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus inscription found later and linked to the tomb, were modern forgery.
Forgery.
Yes, the patina, the style of lettering, inconsistent with antiquity. So the sensational claims were based on fabricated evidence.
That pretty much debunks the Talpiot theory, then.
It does. It reinforces that the execution site and the burial site needed needed to be in close proximity, consistent with the traditional location near the Golgotha rock.
Okay, so we've established the archaeological strength of the Golgotha site and the authenticity of the first-century tomb structure below the edicule, while acknowledging the limits of proof regarding identity. Let's look at the history of the church structure itself now. It hasn't had a peaceful existence, has it?
Far from it. The history of the building is almost as dramatic as its origins. A cycle of destruction, restoration, conflict. It's a microcosm of Jerusalem's history.
Let's fast forward past Constantine. What happened when the early Muslim caliphate took Jerusalem in the 7th century? Did they destroy the church?
Interestingly, no. When Caliph Omar entered Jerusalem in 638 CE, the historical accounts say he showed remarkable tolerance, particularly towards the Christian holy sites. He specifically did not destroy Constantine's massive Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
That's quite significant, given later events. Was there any architectural acknowledgement of the church's importance by the new rulers?
There seems to have been, yes, a subtle but powerful one. When the Umayyad caliphs built the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount just across the valley.
A hugely important Islamic shrine.
Yes. They constructed its dome to be almost exactly the same size, the same diameter as the dome of Constantine's Anastasis Rotunda over the tomb.
Intentionally.
Most scholars believe so. It's seen as a deliberate architectural statement, establishing Islamic presence and power, but also acknowledging and, in a way, competing at eye level with the pre-existing Christian monument. Not immediate erasure, but coexistence initially.
But that initial tolerance didn't last indefinitely.
No, sadly, history shows it rarely does. Under later dynasties, particularly the Abbasids and then the Fatimids based in Egypt, policies became more restrictive towards Christians and Jews in Jerusalem.
How did that manifest at the Holy Sepulchre?
We start seeing symbolic power plays. A story was circulated, for instance, that Caliph Omar had politely declined to pray inside the church when he first visited, saying that if he did, Muslims might later claim it as a mosque. Instead, he supposedly prayed outside on the steps.
Leading
to the construction of the Mosque of Omar right there, at the entrance courtyard of the church. A physical assertion of Islamic presence right at the Christian doorstep. Then came more direct restrictions. Inscriptions were put up forbidding Christians from using their traditional main entrance, limiting their access and rights.
So a gradual tightening of control, increasing pressure.
Yes. And this trend of increasing hostility culminated in an act of shocking violence and destruction in the early 11th century.
Under the Fatimid Caliph al-Hakim.
Yes, al-Hakim by Amir Allah. He reigned from Cairo and was known for his, erratic and often brutal policies, especially towards non-Muslims. In 1009 CE, he ordered the complete destruction of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Not just damage, but complete destruction.
Complete systematic destruction. Contemporary chronicles, both Christian and Muslim, describe it in horrific detail. It wasn't just looting and tearing down the buildings.
What else did they do?
They attacked the holy sites themselves. Reports say al-Hakim's forces deliberately tried to obliterate the very bedrock. They chipped away at the Golgotha rock outcrop.
Defacing the execution site.
Yes, and they attacked the tomb structure within the Anastasis Rotunda, smashing it, trying to reduce it to rubble. The intention seems to have been total erasure to destroy not just the church, but the physical basis for the Christian claim to the site.
A devastating blow. An attempt to make it archaeologically untraceable, almost.
It was catastrophic, an attempt at theological and historical annihilation.
Did anything survive?
Miraculously, perhaps, the foundations in some parts of the rotunda wall seem to have survived, or perhaps the destruction wasn't absolutely total down to the last stone, but the monumental Constantinian basilica was gone.
Was there any attempt to rebuild soon after?
Not immediately by local Christians who were heavily persecuted, but eventually diplomatic channels opened. A few decades later, around the 1040s, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine IX Monomachus negotiated permission from the Fatimids to fund a restoration.
A full rebuild?
No, a much smaller scale project. Monomachus focused his resources on rebuilding the core sacred area, the Anastasis Rotunda over the tomb site. He essentially reconstructed the circular church, but not the grand basilica complex of Constantine.
So a partial restoration. But the news of the 1009 destruction must have spread.
Oh, it spread like wildfire throughout Christendom. The news of the destruction of the holiest site in Christianity by al-Hakim caused immense outrage in Europe.
And that outrage played a role in.
It was a major contributing factor, cited explicitly by Pope Urban II when he called for the First Crusade in 1095. The need to liberate the Holy Sepulchre from Muslim control and protect pilgrims became a powerful rallying cry.
And the Crusaders eventually took Jerusalem.
Yes, in 1099 CE, after a brutal siege and conquest marked by horrific massacres of the city's Muslim and Jewish inhabitants, an estimated 30,000 people killed. A truly bloody beginning to Crusader rule.
And once they controlled the city, what did they do with the Holy Sepulchre site?
They immediately set about a massive rebuilding project. They weren't content with Monomachus's smaller rotunda. They wanted something grand, unified, reflecting their power and piety.
How long did this take?
They worked on it for about 50 years. They incorporated the surviving Byzantine rotunda, but built a large, new, Romanesque-style church adjoining it, covering the Golgotha site as well, and unifying the different holy spots under one roof for the first time since Constantine.
So the structure we see today largely is the Crusader church.
In its basic form and layout, yes. The large, imposing church consolidating the two in Golgotha, that's fundamentally the Crusader achievement from the 12th century, consecrated in 1149. It's been damaged, repaired, modified countless times since, but the core structure dates to that period.
Okay, so after all that destruction, rebuilding, Fatimids, Byzantines, Crusaders,
Yeah.
where does that leave us today in terms of certainty about the locations within the church?
Well, as we discussed, the location of the Golgotha rock outcrop is considered archaeologically secure. The evidence points very strongly to that being the correct spot, preserved within the church. That's solid ground.
And the tomb. Given Al-Hakim's destruction, how sure can we be about the precise spot under the edicule?
That's where the 2016 findings become even more interesting. They confirmed the first century tomb structure is there, but also the analysis of the mortar and layers showed that when Emperor Monomachus rebuilt the rotunda in the 11th century, after Al-Hakim's destruction, he placed his reconstructed edicule, his shrine, over the tomb, remarkably accurately over the remnants of the first century tomb. It confirms that even after the 1009 destruction, the precise location was still known and respected. The tradition held firm.
So there's a continuous chain of identification for the tomb's location, even through the destruction.
It appears so, yes. Monomachus rebuilt it in the right place, and the Crusaders built around that, and subsequent restorations have maintained that central focus.
And today, the church isn't run by just one group, is it? It's famously complicated.
Extremely complicated. It's what's known as a Simultankirche, a shared church.
Shared by whom?
Primarily by 6 different Christian denominations. The Greek Orthodox, the Roman Catholics, represented by the Franciscans, the Armenian Apostolic Church, and then smaller rites held by the Coptic Orthodox, Syriac Orthodox, and Ethiopian Orthodox churches.
6 groups sharing one ancient building. That sounds like a recipe for tension.
It often is. The administration is governed by something called the status quo.
The status quo. What is that?
It's a complex, delicate understanding, largely based on decrees issued by the Ottoman Sultan in the mid-19th century, freezing the rights, responsibilities, and physical territories of each denomination within the church exactly as they were at that time.
Freezing them in time.
Essentially, yes. It dictates who controls which chapel, who cleans which staircase, who can hold services when and where, who is responsible for repairs. And crucially, nothing can be changed, not even minor repairs or alterations, without the unanimous consent of the 3 main communities: Greek Orthodox, Catholic, and Armenian.
Unanimous consent. That must be hard to achieve.
Extremely. It leads to notorious situations. The most famous example is the immovable ladder.
The ladder?
Yes, there's a simple wooden ladder resting on a ledge below a window on the church's upper facade. It's been there since at least the first half of the 19th century, before the status quo was formalized.
And why hasn't anyone moved it in almost 200 years?
Because the ledge it rests on belongs to one denomination, the window it leans against belongs to another, and the space it occupies is common. And no one can agree on whose responsibility it is to move it, or even if it should be moved.
So it just stays there.
It just stays there, a silent symbol of the intense, centuries-old interdenominational politics and the difficulty of managing shared sacred space. The political history of the site is still unfolding right there on the window ledge.
That is a perfect, almost absurd illustration of the layers of history and human complexity packed into this one building.
It truly is.
Okay, let's try and summarize the key takeaways from this deep dive. We've established that the execution site, Golgotha,
is rooted in solid archaeological fact. The specific quarry outcrop, its visibility, its location confirmed to be outside the first-century city walls, it all lines up. Secure ground.
And the tomb structure beneath the edicule
Is authentically first-century in origin. It matches the gospel descriptions of a new, single, rock-cut tomb. The 2016 work confirmed its age and type.
But the crucial caveat.
The link between that specific tomb and Jesus himself remains a matter of historical tradition and faith, passed down through figures like Constantine and his successors. Archaeology confirms the site and the structure type, but not the identity of who is buried there. That question remains scientifically unresolvable.
Right. So for you listening to this, what does it all mean? We've seen the evidence point strongly to this location as the place where the events described in the New Testament likely occurred. The strength of the tradition identifying this specific spot, enduring through centuries of suppression and destruction, is remarkable in itself.
The continuity of memory is powerful.
But that final piece, definitive proof of Jesus' body in that specific tomb, remains beyond the reach of science. So the final thought we want to leave you with is this. Given the monumental history, the deep faith, the immense geopolitical significance crammed into this single, shared, often damaged, profoundly sacred place, does the lack of absolute archaeological certainty about the identity of the person in the tomb diminish its importance? Or is the site's true significance found in the 2 millennia of human belief, conflict, devotion, and history that have flowed over and been preserved within these ancient stones?
That's the question, isn't it? Certainty versus significance. Something to ponder.